Willow Creek, a small town in the middle of the Kansas plains, was once a bustling hub for blue-collar workers. Now it is a shadow of its former glory. The steel mill, the pride of the town, closed more than 2 decades ago, taking with it a wave of young people seeking better opportunities. One by one along Main Street, the shops are boarded up, their paint peeling, their rusted signs swaying in the wind that blows down the deserted avenue. The only store still open is Mabel's Diner, a small diner that has survived the storms, where those who remain gather to reminisce and mourn the past of Willow Creek. In the corner of the diner, Hank Thompson, a 60-year-old farmer with gray hair and hands tanned by years of working in the fields, sips his coffee. He sighs, looking out the window where people had been passing by just a decade ago. "This whole town is going to disappear," Hank muttered, his voice tinged with bitterness. Mabel Carter, the owner, a woman in her 50s with a kind smile but worried eyes, just nodded silently. She knew he was right. But everything changed one morning in March 2025, when a shocking news story spread through the town like wildfire. Elon Musk had bought 70% of Willow Creek's commercial real estate. No one really knew why. Some speculated it was a joke, a fake news story amplified by social media. But when CNBC and the New York Times started reporting it, it became undeniable. The tech billionaire behind Tesla and SpaceX was determined to turn a dying small town in Kansas into the sustainable community of the future. In his first statement, Elon revealed his ambitious plans. ***, a solar technology testbed, a Tesla factory that would provide jobs for local residents, and even a Neuralink research center. ***. For many Willow Creek residents, it was more scary news than welcome news. They weren't used to big changes, especially from an outsider like Musk. Murmurs rang out around Mabel's Diner. "He wants to turn this town into the next Silicon Valley? I don't need those weird solar houses, I just want to keep my land. The last time a rich guy came here promising change, they closed the factory and took all our jobs with them." Just 3 days after the news broke, Elon Musk himself arrived in Willow Creek. One afternoon, under the wide Kansas sky, a sleek black Tesla Model X appeared on the dusty Main Street. The doors swung open in their signature gullwing style, and Elon stepped out, wearing a leather jacket, sunglasses, and his signature smile. He didn't arrive by helicopter, nor did he have a large entourage, just a man with a vision. He walked down Main Street, stopped in front of Mabel's Diner, and looked around as if trying to imagine a different future for the place. When he entered, the room fell silent. All eyes were on Elon Musk. ***, the outsider with dreams too big for a town too small. ***. Little did he know, his real challenge wasn't technology or capital. It was convincing a community that had lost faith in promises of change. That evening, the Willow Creek Town Council was packed, a rarity in recent years. Most residents only came to these meetings when there was a serious problem, and a tech billionaire suddenly wanting to change their town was certainly a big deal. Elon walked into the meeting room, stood at the podium, and looked down at the tense faces. The fluorescent lights on the ceiling reflected off his simple jacket, but there was nothing to hide the difference between him and the crowd. This wasn't a tech conference, nor a Tesla product launch. It was a small community facing an uncertain future. He began his speech confidently. "I want Willow Creek to be a shining example of rural innovation. With sustainable technology, we can turn this place into a self-sufficient community, with solar homes, jobs in the Tesla factory, and even a Neuralink cutting-edge research center." The room was silent for a moment. Then a hoarse voice rang out from the front row. "We don't need your fancy gadgets, Mr. Musk." All eyes turned to Hank Thompson, who stood up, clutching his old cowboy hat. His eyes were tired and frustrated. "We need jobs, not robots. Do you know how many people here lost everything when the steel mill closed? Do you think a few solar panels and a research center will save this town?" Murmurs began to spread around the room. Nods of agreement emerged. The people of Willow Creek weren't necessarily anti-technology. They just didn't want an outsider coming in and telling them how to live. Elon sensed more resistance than he'd expected. He looked around the room, from Hank's frowning face to Mabel's worried eyes, and sighed. He knew he needed a different approach. Rather than leave in disappointment, Elon decided to stay in Willow Creek for a month. He didn't stay in a hotel or a fancy mansion, but rented a small room above Mabel's diner. This caused a stir in town. "I want to understand more about life here," he told Mabel as he paid his rent. "If I'm going to change this place, I need to know what it really needs." From that day on, Elon began spending time talking to the residents. He sat in the diner every morning, hearing stories about Willow Creek's past, about the years when the town had flourished. But despite his good intentions, residents were skeptical. Elon's first project was installing solar panels on Main Street. His idea was to reduce the electricity costs for local businesses, saving them money. But just as the panels were installed on the roofs of Mabel's diner and several other stores, a sudden storm swept through Kansas, taking down nearly half of the panels. The next morning, Hank and several other men stood looking at the broken glass on the street, shaking their heads. "He doesn't understand the weather here. We've lived here all our lives, and he thinks a few panels will make things better?" Instead of convincing them, Elon made them even more skeptical. That night, at the diner, Elon sat brooding over a cup of coffee. He overheard Mabel say to an employee, "We're in trouble. The cost of raw materials is up, the customers are down. If things keep going like this, I don't know how long we can keep the place open." Hearing this, Elon immediately had an idea. He turned to Mabel. "If I could help this diner cut costs while still ensuring fresh ingredients, would you like to try?" Mabel raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "We're going to build a community garden, using sustainable technology to grow vegetables and herbs. Mabel's diner will have clean, fresh, cheaper ingredients, and people can work in it to earn extra income." This idea got Mabel thinking. Elon continued, "I don't just want to bring technology here. I want to integrate it with the core values of the town. A garden not only creates jobs, but also helps connect the community." The next morning, news of the community garden spread throughout town. And surprisingly, the first person to voice his support was Hank Thompson. "I don't believe in complicated technology," Hank said, "but I believe in tilling the land and growing crops." With Hank leading the project, other residents began to feel less alienated by Elon's ideas. Willow Creek couldn't change overnight, but this was the first step toward bridging the gap between past and future. Hank Thompson had spent decades tending to his modest farm on the outskirts of Willow Creek. He knew the land like the back of his hand, the seasons, the soil, the way a good rain could make or break a harvest. So, when he found himself reluctantly leading Elon Musk's experimental community garden, it felt like stepping into a different world. First, he was skeptical. Hydroponic towers, automated irrigation, soil sensors. These weren't the tools of the farmers he grew up with. But as the days passed, something unexpected happened. Kids from the local school came by, fascinated by the technology, eager to learn how they could grow food without vast acres of farmland. Retired folks, who had once spent their youth working the land, found a new sense of purpose nurturing the crops. Even the most skeptical townsfolk began to take notice as the garden produced fresh vegetables for Mabel's diner, lowering costs and bringing in more customers. The project wasn't just about farming, it was about restoring a sense of community. Yet, just as the town was starting to warm up to Elon's presence, a bigger challenge loomed on the horizon. #, a political standoff. The biggest roadblock to Elon's vision was Mayor Clara Evans. She was a tough, no-nonsense woman in her late 50s, a staunch traditionalist who had fought against chain stores, new developments, and anything she believed might strip Willow Creek of its identity. The proposed Tesla factory was, to her, the ultimate threat. "A factory like that will turn us into just another corporate outpost," Clara said at a town meeting. "Willow Creek isn't some tech experiment, it's home." Many in the audience nodded. While some residents had started to appreciate the community garden, a factory was a whole different beast. It meant change on a scale that frightened them. Jobs were one thing, but at what cost? Would the charm of their town be lost? Would their way of life be replaced by self-driving trucks and robotic assembly lines? Elon knew words wouldn't convince Clara. She needed to see his vision firsthand. Elon invited Clara to visit SpaceX headquarters in California. It was a long shot, but she agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because she wanted to look him in the eye and tell him he was wrong. When she arrived, she expected cold, sterile innovation. Machines replacing people, soulless efficiency. Instead, she saw something different. Engineers working passionately, problem-solving in real time, creating something bigger than themselves. She met families who had moved to work for SpaceX, people who still held onto their hometown roots while embracing progress. At the end of the trip, Elon made his pitch. "I don't want to erase Willow Creek," he told her. "I want to prove that progress and tradition can coexist." Clara was silent on the flight back. She had seen something she hadn't expected. Innovation didn't have to mean erasing the past. It could mean building on it. A week later, at another town meeting, Clara stood before the residents of Willow Creek. "The Tesla factory will move forward," she said, pausing as murmurs filled the room. "But only if Elon agrees to restore and preserve the town's historic library." It was an unexpected condition. The library had been a cornerstone of Willow Creek for over a century, but in recent years, it had fallen into disrepair, barely surviving on community donations. Clara's proposal wasn't just about preserving the past. It was about proving that Elon's vision could truly blend old and new. Elon agreed without hesitation. The library would not only be restored but transformed into a technology learning center where the town's youth could study programming, renewable energy, and AI. ***, a bridge between tradition and the future. ***. With that, the town's biggest skeptic had become its most surprising ally. And for the first time, Willow Creek began to believe that change didn't have to mean losing who they were. Could mean becoming something even stronger. By the end of the month, Willow Creek was buzzing with new life. The community garden, once met with skepticism, had become a thriving hub of activity. Fresh produce from the hydroponic system now supplied Mabel's diner, not only improving the quality of meals but also drawing in curious tourists who had heard of the town's unexpected transformation. What was once a dying town had now been labeled the Tech Town Revival, with bloggers, journalists, and travelers coming to witness how cutting-edge innovation was blending with rural tradition. Meanwhile, the Tesla factory was more than just a corporate outpost. It was a source of hope. Locals who had once feared automation now found themselves employed, learning new skills, building something bigger than themselves. Hank's son, who had spent years struggling to find stable work, was now among the first employees. For the first time in years, he had a future in Willow Creek. At the heart of it all was the restored library. What had once been a dusty, overlooked building was now a modern technology and learning center. The library's historic architecture remained intact, but inside, it was equipped with coding classes for kids, AI and renewable energy workshops for teens, and even a digital literacy program for the town's older generation. The past and the future coexisted, just as Mayor Clara had demanded. For many in Willow Creek, this was the true symbol of change. Not a factory, not solar panels, but a place where knowledge, tradition, and progress met. Elon, who had once been viewed as nothing more than an eccentric billionaire outsider, found himself genuinely welcomed. One evening, he showed up at the community center for Friday night bingo. The room went silent for a moment as people registered what they were seeing. Elon Musk, the man who had once clashed with them in town meetings, now sitting among them with a bingo card in hand. He lost spectacularly. But by the end of the night, he was laughing along with the locals, sharing jokes over slices of Mabel's famous apple pie. He wasn't just the billionaire who had bought their town anymore. He was one of them. At the annual Willow Creek Harvest Festival, the town came together to celebrate the rebirth of their home. Stalls lined Main Street, selling homemade goods and produce from the community garden. Children ran through the streets, excited about the future in a way they hadn't been in years. Under the glow of string lights, Mayor Clara stood on a small stage, microphone in hand. "Elon, when you first came here, we weren't sure if we wanted you. We weren't sure if you wanted us. But tonight I can say this, You gave us a future without taking away our past. And for that, we thank you. The crowd erupted into applause. As Elon took a bite of Mabel's legendary apple pie, he smiled, realizing that what he had built in Willow Creek was far more than a tech experiment. It was a home. As the festival reached its peak, the townspeople gathered around the main square, raising their glasses in a final toast. Hank, standing at the center, his voice firm but warm, lifted his drink and declared, "You're one of us now, Elon." The crowd cheered, voices blending into a shared celebration of what their town had become. Elon, still savoring a forkful of Mabel's famous apple pie, paused for a moment. The laughter, the music, the sense of community. This was more than just a successful project. It was proof that progress and tradition didn't have to be enemies. ####, a national model for revival. News of Willow Creek's transformation spread beyond Kansas. Articles appeared in major newspapers, calling it America's first tech-integrated small town, and the future of rural innovation. Other struggling small towns took notice. Community leaders from across the country reached out, eager to understand how a nearly abandoned main street had turned into a thriving hub of sustainable technology and local culture. Elon, inspired by his time in Kansas, didn't stop with Willow Creek. Back at Tesla, he launched a new initiative focused on sustainable development in rural America. The program aimed to support small towns with renewable energy solutions, job training programs, and localized technology integration, ensuring that the heartland of America wouldn't be left behind in the age of innovation. For many Americans, Willow Creek's journey became more than just a business success. It became a story of cultural bridge building. It proved that even a billionaire tech mogul could find common ground with the heartland. That progress didn't have to erase heritage. That technology, when applied with respect for local values, could breathe life into forgotten places without taking away their soul. As Elon drove away from Willow Creek in his black Tesla, leaving behind a town forever changed, he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.